Hey guys, Classic here with another artifact video. While we wait for artifact to be released, or at least to be able to play it, I thought it would be interesting to look at the heroes and compare them to their Dota 2 counterpart. Now, this is not meant to be a super serious analysis of like, oh my god, is that pinpoint perfect, but rather, did they keep the feel of the hero in Dota 2 to artifact? Was the transition well made? And in most cases, yes, they actually did a fantastic job, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you guys. Today we will go into the red heroes. Now, I won't do every single hero, I simply handpicked a couple that I thought were either very well made or poorly made in some cases, and I was left with some questions that maybe you guys can answer it. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, make sure to subscribe for more artifact content. The first hero I'll dive into is Axe. Who is Axe in Dota 2? Well, he's the initiator per excellence. He's the one that blink daggers in, taunts everyone, gets a lot of damage out, and then finishes them off with his ultimate. He's really the clear-cut bruiser tank that we see in multiple games and multiple universes, kind of like a barbarian. How did that translate to artifact? Well, first off, the beefy stats are there. 7 attack is a lot, can one-shot multiple heroes, 2 armor and 11 health. That is one hell of a tank hero. Having 2 armor is massive, especially on a big health pool like 11. That means that every time someone tries to actually hurt him, they have to go through this 2 armor first before even touching that 11 health pool. So for the beefy side, they did a fantastic job. Axe is going to be extremely hard to kill. Now, as for the iconic role and the abilities, they opted for Berserker's Call, which is the taunt in Dota 2. Now, let's look at the artifact version. Choose an allied red hero, it battles its enemy neighbors. Now, I feel like that is well done in terms of flavor. Let me just make a little disclaimer. My analysis is mostly flavor-wise, because obviously you have a lot of balance to do, and that is very hard for the dev team to make sure that they both nail flavor and balance. So sometimes I will be nitpicky on some little things, but that doesn't mean, oh, they should have done it like that, I know better. Definitely not. It's really for fun, for the flavor. Now back to Berserker's Call. Choose an allied red hero, it battles its enemy neighbors, which is really strong. It will hit the 3 targets in front of the allied red hero. In that case, we will assume it's Axe. Therefore, having 7 attack, that will be massive. You can probably clear all 3 in most cases, and having 2 armor, that's going to make you extremely tanky. You'll be able to deal with a lot of creeps and even a hero. In my opinion, this card is going to be extremely strong. If you want to go and dominate one lane, you only need Axe and Berserker's Call, and you'll be able to do a whole lot. In terms of flavor, it's pretty much nailed on. It does exactly what it does in Dota 2. You AoE to a certain degree with a short range, because even in Dota 2, Axe's taunt is not a super big range, and then you force them to attack you and fight you. How close could that have been? I think it pretty much nailed it. The only thing that Dota 2 Axe has that Artifact has doesn't is the counterattacks or retaliate. In Dota 2, Axe is really known for his counter helix. That's how he does most of his damage. So it's really surprising that they went with no retaliate for the hero card. Now, once again, like I said, it might be due to balance issues, but that was really surprising to me. Other than that little thing, I think they pretty much knocked it out of the park. The second hero I wanted to analyze was Bristleback, and this is an interesting one. What defines Bristleback in Dota 2 is all about his W, his quills. He's gonna go around, spam an AoE burst of damage with his quills, and it's gonna stack up in terms of damage. Now, that's something that is not really present in Artifact, and maybe it would have been too hard to balance. That could have been one reason, but it's interesting because when we think about Bristleback, we think about that really tanky dude that's gonna get in the fray, do some AoE damage, and then try to make people chase him to keep doing AoE damage. Now, that's something, like I said, it's not an Artifact. What they opted instead is the Baroom Brawler. Now, that kind of gives the vibe of the longer fights go on, stronger he gets, but in this case he gets more tanky, he doesn't get more damage, so that's interesting. Also, I'm really fine with the 812 stat line. That's obviously very tanky, does a lot of damage. That's fine. I think it's something we feel also in Dota 2. As for the signature card, they went for Vicious Nazoku, which is his Q usually, that slows down enemies and removes some armor. Now in Artifact, it only modifies with 2 armor, which is fine, you know. Slow is a bit of a weird mechanic to implement in a card game, and like we said earlier, it doesn't have to be 1-for-1. As long as like the flavor's there, I think they did a great job, and in that case, fantastic. It modifies them, therefore it's there permanently, so technically it could stack, which is how his Q works in Dota 2. It would have been interesting to see some kind of AoE from either his ability or his signature card, something that would do low damage at the start, but the more you play it, the harder it actually hits. That would have been interesting. There's another part that I think is really fascinating with Bristleback, is that in Dota 2, when they hit you from the side or from the back, you actually take less damage. Now, how could you translate that to Artifact? Well, I think a way to do it, which would have been pretty hard to configure, but I think a way that could have been possible would be to make him a passive where whenever he gets damage from spells or enemies that are not in his lane, he would take less damage. I think that would have been a little flavor that would have been cool. Maybe that's too hard to balance. I can kind of understand why they didn't went for that, but in terms of flavor, that is maybe the one thing I would have changed. Now, like I said, I don't claim to be a game designer. I simply want to share with you what I think could be improved in terms of flavor, or what I like, what I dislike. The third one I looked at is Centaur Warrunner. Centaur Warrunner is known in Artifact for being that tank movement speed guy that does a bunch of retaliate damage also, because he also has a counter. And see, in this case, they actually transitioned that into Artifact and they gave him retaliate too. Now, the one thing I think is really interesting with Centaur Warrunner is Double Edge, his signature card. It's probably the transition that I think they pretty much nailed it to, even the little details that I don't know if they went as deep as that into their thinking, but I'd like to assume so. What does it do? Well, it gives +8 attack and -8 armor. So that's a huge double edge. You do more damage, but you tank more. What I like about it is that in Dota 2, when you use double edge, it hits them and it also hits you. But you can never kill yourself with that ability. So how did they deal with that aspect of the ability? Well, instead of removing health, they decided to remove armor, which in some cases will do the same thing, but that means that he'll never be able to kill himself with that, because having -50 armor does not kill you. I simply thought that was truly interesting in terms of design choice to really make it remove armor. I think that is fantastic. I think they gave him Retaliate and not Axe, because in Axe's case, it's a prog that happens 20% of the time. Meanwhile, Centaur Warrunner always counterattacks in Dota 2. Therefore, in Artifact, it always Retaliate. That might be the difference as to why he has it and Axe doesn't. All in all, this is another hero that I think the overall feel has been well preserved. In some cases, I think they missed the mark though. The perfect example would be Pugna. First of all, it's kind of weird to make Pugna a red hero, being a ranged mage snuker. I feel like it would fit much better either in black or blue, probably black just due to his aesthetics and all. It would have been a better choice there. Maybe it was for balance issues, they might have wanted kind of a spellcaster in red, I don't know, but it feels very odd. His ability is Nether Blast, which is funky. In Dota 2, what does Nether Blast do? Well, it does damage. It hits enemies and also hits structures. Now, I think the latter part is why they named his ability Nether Blast, because in Artifact, it condemns improvements. This is a bit weird because his Q is known to do damage, now it does no damage, but it's also known to hit structures, and in a sense, improvements are kind of like structures, so maybe that's what they were going for, but once again, it feels kind of weird. Another thing is in the base stats, it's a 6/9. Now, having 9 health is quite tanky, and Pugna in Dota 2 is rather the opposite of tanky, it's kind of squishy. His signature card is Nether Ward. Now, what does Nether Ward do in Dota 2? Basically, it places a ward, and whenever they cast spells, they get hit by that ward. Now, in that regard, I think the transition was well done in Artifact. The Nether ward does exactly what it does in Dota 2. It's an improvement. It's the closest we have to being a ward, and it does exactly as the other thing does. Whenever they cast a spell, you do damage to them. So on that, good job. The thing that's weird though is this is not really the ability that defines Pugna in Dota 2, but that's okay. They probably went there because the other would have been too close of other cards. As long as this transition is well done, I'm fine. It's probably one of these few heroes where I'm like, I would like to know their thought process, because I'm sure they have good reasons. With Ursa, I think they did overall a fine job. Now, what does Ursa do? It's kind of this tank that's going to do a whole lot of damage and a lot of armor that needs to auto attack hopefully one target. Ursa is known to do more and more damage to that single person, which in the case of Artifact, how they translated that is with the ability that the card has. Brewery swipes: when Ursa deals battle damage to a unit, modify that unit with -1 armor. So that means the next time Ursa is going to attack them, they will do more damage because of that -1 armor. Now, it's not quite the same, but it's close enough. Sometimes it's hard to have something translate from a MOBA to a card game, so on that I'll give them a pass. This is well done. It's probably as close as you can get. 710 also seems like a good fit. High attack, kind of high health, not as high as some other heroes, but Ursa is not that tanky without attacking. He gets really tanky in Dota 2 when he pops his ultimate, Enrage. And Enrage is his Artifact signature card, which gives a +4 attack and a +4 armor, therefore doing more damage and being tankier. Well done, good transition. Also, it's very cheap, 4 mana to basically ensure that your red hero kills anything that's in front and basically almost receives no damage. Very strong. The one defining thing about Ursa though is usually attack speed, which is very hard to translate in a card game. Now, the only way I could think about transitioning attack speed would be with concepts like either Wind Fury in Hearthstone or Double Strike in Magic, where the heroes attacks twice. That can be considered as attack speed in some sense. Maybe they don't want that in Artifact though, because that creates a whole lot of problems of balance with buffs and all that jazz. They might not want to touch on that, or maybe it's just not revealed yet. But as for now, Double Strike or Wind Fury does not exist. It's simply my little take on how maybe they could have transitioned that aspect. The last red hero I want to touch on is Legion Commander. In Dota 2, Legion Commander is this hero that gets stronger and stronger as the game goes on. It's this kind of fighter that wants to get some kills in a 1v1 situation. They decided to make Legion Commander a 6-1-8, which I think is great fighting stats. That 1 armor is decent to be able to fight longer, but not only is 6 attack already high enough to kill a lot, Legion Commander also has +2 Retaliate, which is fantastic. They called it Moment of Courage, which is Legion's Commander's ability in Dota 2 that also counterattacks. So on that, kudos. Really well done once again. We really feel like a Legion Commander has transitioned well. Now, the signature card is usually her ultimate in Dota 2, Duel. For an artifact, you choose an allied red hero, another unit, and they battle each other. Kind of similar to Axe in a sense. You force someone to fight you. Just a side note, having that costing only 2, it seems extremely strong for red decks. But apart from that, it's pretty much on what it actually does in Dota 2. The main difference that I think could have been captured is every time Legion Commander wins a duel in Dota 2, it gets stronger. Now, we don't have that aspect in Artifact. Maybe that would have been hard to balance, but I think the most iconic way you could have done duel is make it cost a bit more, have the same thing, choose an allied red hero and another unit to battle each other, but have the winner being modified with +1 attack. That way you can transfer the flavor of getting stronger as the game goes on. Now, this maybe would have been too hard to balance because in Dota 2 your opponents could do something to maybe prevent you from winning that duel. Maybe in Artifact, since there's no kind of instance, that would have been too easy to control, but I think it would have been doable. Just raise the cost of duel and make it gain damage, and then you have the whole flavor transferred. Maybe they wanted a cheap dual card, so they did not want to make it do too much to make it cost too much. But I think that's a little thing, that's a little modification that would have made it really 10 out of 10 transition. I hope you liked this vid. I like comparing both. I don't know why, but I feel like it's interesting to see, okay, what's the flavor of that hero in the Origin game, and how does that translate to Artifact? I can't wait to actually get my hands on Artifact. I'm gonna also do more colors in the future. Until then, have a wonderful day.